Oh, here's a secret. You're free. You know, when they came up with that idea, it was a novel idea.
They all looked at each other like, damn, I never thought of that.
That's exactly what happened. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you this Thursday evening, April 24th, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for episode number 200, Darkness. Darkness, because, you know, there's a lot of darkness at play right now. And there's an old saying, if you want to see the snakes move, beat the grass. Donald Trump has been beating the grass, and the snakes are moving. Their goals, their strategies, their tactics are on full display to me. I can see them. I can feel them. We're going to talk about that tonight. Uh, Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
We're going to do some review tonight. I said on Tuesday, we really worked through a very ambitious agenda Tuesday night. And thank you if you watched that previous episode. Uh, but I said we have to go back over some stuff and consolidate. And when I say we, I mean me, because I'm working on new ideas and I work it out with you here together. But something that Tanner and I want to discuss with you this evening is the uh, difficulty of promoting, with the support of these various platforms, a political message. You know, I'm not even going to say that it's anti politics or anti my politics. I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to say that media, podcasting is entertainment. And there is a um, restriction in the effort, our efforts to promote the podcast on these various channels is restricted by the channels themselves, the platforms themselves, because we're not fulfilling what they would like us to fulfill, which is to be very entertaining, putting people to sleep. And we have the opposite agenda here, which is we want to wake up. I want to wake up. So, without blaming any of these platforms, I just want Tanner, can you just, in a way that's not going to get us in trouble with the constabulary, kind of describe this so people can get your insight?
Yeah, so we kind of think we've been talking about it for a while. We've been speculating that we're shadow banned, and I think that I'm finally catching on to what it is. So I've noticed that when I'm trying to just check on how a live premiere is going, I will, search up the Professor Penn podcast in my search bar. The first red flag is I'm subscribed to the channel, but it will never autofill. It'll never autofill the Professor Penn podcast, even though I type it in all the time. And when I go into it, the first results that pop up are a couple videos from the Professor Penn podcast, but you don't see the live premiere. You're not really seeing like the actual channel. It seems like you actually have to go digging, and I'm noticing the same thing with Royce's channels. It's just a lot of you have to really dig into you have to really dig into the platforms to actually find what you're looking for. It's not like they're going to present us to new people. So we're kind of struggling that way, guys.
So, you know, you're reposting because this is about politics now. We're going to talk about this for a little bit here before we start the agenda this evening. You know, the politics, the political action aspect of this is to use the digital communities of X and YouTube and Rumble and Truth Social and all the different places where we're trying to uh, be present to aggregate a community that I hope a significant number of people within that community are willing to work for the end of maintaining the republic, of protecting freedom. And, you know, there's the old traditional way of knocking on doors and licking envelopes. And, you know, we're into this digital thing. And of course, you know, so there's an obstacle. So there's, you know, improvise, adapt, and overcome. We have to improvise. We're going to be adding a lot of content in a lot of different channels. You're going to see websites come up, which that's going to allow us to communicate more effectively with each other. The idea being that we're heading towards here in Minnesota. Now, whatever state you're in, the same thing is going on. And I hope in your state there's some organization like Free People Radio. That's what we're broadcasting from today. Free People Radio from here in Minneapolis. It's the belly of the beast. We have communism up here in the Midwest. We had a big news event this past few days, which is getting national attention. A political operative, a staffer, I think. I don't follow these stories that closely because it's a little bit, irrelevant. But somebody associated with the Democrat Party keyed a bunch of Teslas, causing a lot of damage. And the local, allegedly Soros campaign funded prosecutor here in Hennepin County uh, declined to prosecute this individual. Okay, so um, this is Minneapolis, and there's something like this going on in every state. This battle between people that want to defend sovereignty and people that want to usher in a new age, a new world order, a great reset. This is going on everywhere. And the point of doing this for me is to entertain, to inform, but to motivate people to action. So let's say 5,000 people are watching this tonight, which that the premiere is going to get watched across the platforms tonight by about 5,000 people. I'd like it to be 50,000 or 500,000. That's not in my control. That's in your control because I just keep turning out the content, but I'm not going to get any support from any of these platforms to promote the program. And for those of you that text in and go, I've watched every episode, I mean, there's some people that see value. I want to thank publicly Kathleen Hagan, who is a loyal participant in the community. She sent in a donation. You know, if 1% of that 5,000 people, 1%, 50 people committed tonight to get involved politically with us, that'd be enormous. If 50 people decided that they were going to go to tireget.com to buy their next set of tires, which they need right now, or go to Free People Radio store and buy a coffee mug or a T-shirt, these things matter to the growth of the channel. I'll tell you when I'm making money. I mean, I'm just going to say thank you very much. We're making money. Right now, we want to break even. We're going to talk about this break even thing tonight also. But the idea here now is we're heading in to another political season. We've had our break since November of last year. We're into the end of April now. A third of this year will be in the can, so to speak, very shortly. And before we know it, it's going to be Christmas. And then we're going to be into the 2026 election season. Well, here in Minnesota, and I think about this a lot. I mean, um, the Republican Party is a secret society. It is a secret society. It is a closed club, an organization that functions like any other secret society. At its base, anybody can join. All you got to do is show up and join. And then you become what's called a culturated, you are taught the culture of the party. Doesn't matter what state you're in, this functions everywhere. And at the grassroots level, everything is tolerated because nobody is effective. And the party is looking for effective people that it can develop into apparatchiks that support party activity. And if you're like Professor Penn, like David Penn, where you're a critic, you see, wow, that's kind of BS, Alex, or that's kind of BS, David, or that's just BS, period. Even if you're elected official, that's BS. I'm calling out the. Then, of course, they move to remove you because they don't want you up into the hierarchy of the infrastructure of the party where the secrets are kept. And in Minnesota, why do we know they're secrets? Because we have the evidence with Michael Broadcorp being secretly on the payroll of the party. And we're going to talk about that more tonight. So the party itself functions like the Masons or the Illuminati or any other secret society that brings people in at the bottom, moves them up through a series of elections, which are actually rituals of incorporation into higher levels of membership in this secret society. And it attempts, like all secret societies do, to enhance the likelihood of preferred behavioral outcomes, which here in Minnesota is we want to elect Republicans, which sounds on its face completely reasonable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then you get into what is a Republican? And that's why we have this tremendous battle going on here in Minnesota and in every state. If you are a lover of freedom, if you are a lover of Christ, if you believe in a creator that granted you unalienable rights, if you are a warrior, there is something that you can do every day to enhance the likelihood that we stay free and that we are sovereign as Republicans in terms of the philosophy of republicanism. My goal is different than the goal of the Republican Party, at least in Minnesota. Now, I don't know your state. Your state might have already been purified, or is that the right word? It's not the right word. It's a numbers game. Purification sounds a little Nazi to me. It's just a pure numbers game. If more citizens show up than party insiders, the party insiders will run away. And my point that I'm going to keep saying until things change, the insiders have had control of this country for a very long time, 1866 to be exact. During that period of time, we've seen the establishment of a private central bank. We've seen the waging of a continuous war since 1913, a world war punctuated by periods of rearmament. We've seen a tremendous destruction in the value of the currency, probably 99% since 1913, something like that. But what would you expect? It's not gold, it's paper. A $37 trillion debt, an open border that's let in tens of millions of quote unquote newcomers, and the aforementioned endless war. This is what the paid professional political class has given to America. And I must caution all of us to remember there is a very large proportion of Americans, and it kind of looks like an inverse pyramid because the older you are, the more likely you are to believe in this atrocity. If your news source is Fox News and CNN and reading the local newspaper, and that's what you look to for your street corner of information, you're going to support what we're going to talk about later tonight. Who is the aggressor? Why is it dark? You're going to support this ideology. I got my friend Rob, my associate Rob, here in the Republican Party every day. He probably knows I'm going into the studio every day. He gives me a good dose of how much he hates Trump every morning.
Mm.
And I tell him the same thing. I'm too busy to watch President Trump. Now, if you love President Trump and you're watching him, I'm not criticizing you. I'm making an I statement. I am too busy trying to pursue the maintenance of freedom to watch President Trump. You know what I'm watching? I'm watching the money. I am watching the real deal. I'm reading the Federal Register every day. I'm reading the court opinions. I'm reading the bills. I'm not interested in the theater of the deal, only insofar as I need to comment on it. I don't get caught up in the WWE
Mm.
wrestling depiction of Vladimir Putin as a murderous thug. It's just reminds me of the Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi that we had here when I was a teenager. We had the All-Star Wrestling Channel here in Minnesota. It was owned by a dude named Vern Gagne, and he had all these characters like the Crusher and the Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi and Jerry Blackwell. I mean, these guys played roles, and then they wrestled, and the wrestling was fake. The outcome was actually predetermined. And that's what we have here on television, on our mainstream media public relations channels. But when the citizens come into the process, when the citizens go to precinctstrategy.com, when the citizens hit the website, support at Target, we're going to get you a Penn website soon. When you go to ricewhite.us, when you sign up, hey, we're organized now. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're watching me and you're in the party. You rejected me. I'm not rejected from politics. I'm rejected from your little narrow secret society of irrelevance. That's what I'm rejected from. And I want to thank you for rejecting me, because to be sucked up into that system and have responsibilities to it when it is perverse as can be. It's not perverse because the party itself is perverse or the structures are perverse. It's the people. It's the people. It's the people that brought us Michael Broadcorp, the people that are running the party today. Bobby Bishop, who's down in CD6 at Emmer staffer, still very powerful in Min GOP, was allegedly, from what I'm being told from insiders, was directly involved in the hiring of Michael Broadcorp. And he's still there. How are we going to deal with this? We need people. And let's have a good time doing it. We actually can organize just as effectively as the communists, and they are organized. Now, they're doing it on the payroll because, if you're a materialist, you don't do anything unless there's money involved. Is that how we are as Americans? Is our American identity so shallow that the only time we will exercise it is for pay? And let me tell you, that's not how I live my life. America is itself a secret society born of educated men who tried to bring forward a philosophy for all of us to make not a secret, to make it, oh, here's a secret. You're free. When they came up with that idea, it was a novel idea.
So they all looked at each other like, "Damn, I never thought of that."
That's exactly what happened. They all were sitting around in a room and they said, damn, I'm free. And then, of course, somebody said, I'm free to steal. And another person said, I'm free to sleep with any woman I want to. Then another perverse dude said, I'll sleep with cats and dogs. Yeah, we're free. Okay, freedom is a dangerous thing that requires a moral and just populace. Otherwise, it becomes a $37 trillion debt, an open border, and an endless war that enriches a very small group, couple thousand people are the folks that are getting over on this deal, and the rest of us are inventory. And if that pisses you off that you're just a number, like those Jews that were in Auschwitz, they had that I grew up with them, the Holocaust deniers, the people that deny that. I grew up with people that were tattooed with numbers. They were inventory, like a stock keeping unit. That's what we are now. Are you numbered? Do you have a social security number?
Yeah,
I guess you have a number, don't you?
I do.
Real ID. We are inventory. And the actuarialists that work for the insurance companies know exactly how to extract wealth from us so that they get richer and we die quicker. And why do I say we're dying quicker? Our life expectancy is falling.
Mhm.
It's not me making it up like a conspiracy theorist. It's the data. So we're going to be very organized. If 50 people could jump up today and repost these links in every social that you can get them into, and go to my X at Prof Penn Podcast and follow me and repost those shorts and help Royce by going to Please Call Me Crazy and reposting his podcasts. We got some great content here. I know that. When I have person after person come to me and say, I've watched every episode and this is number 200, what a compliment uh, for the work, because I'm working at this. We were supposed to have a guest today that canceled. He's going to come back soon. He was sick, got sick. I wasn't planning on working on a script today. I had to really think about this yesterday. I'm working on this stuff every day, and I'm doing it for me. Um, I get to learn so much, and I am politically expressing my will to be free. So when I die, and could be tomorrow, could be 30 years from now, in that moment of death, I'm going to have things I think about, not going to make me happy. But the thing that's going to be working for me is I've given all I have for God and country. And people say, well, it's not military. You know what? This is military in the sense that I'm giving over to defending freedom, whatever it takes, by any means necessary. And, when you say things like that, it sounds rather, you know, radical. It's not. I mean, I think Jefferson said something like the tree of liberty is refreshed with the blood of patriots, or, I don't remember the exact quote, but, freedom's not free. We have to be willing to sacrifice for it. We are a nation of takers, aggregate. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm saying in aggregate, that $37 trillion debt and that trade deficit are the data that we can look to say we consume more than we produce. Do you know anybody in your life, Tanner, that takes more than they give?
Oh, yeah. I don't they're not my friends. I don't claim them as my friends, but I definitely know a lot of people like that. It's a very sad reality, and I think it's even worse is they seem so clueless that they even do it. They think they want it. They think that they deserve it. They think that that's what America life is.
Yeah, well, guess what? As we're going to talk about in darkness today, we've gotten a long way from the forest. In the forest, the animal has to survive. If it's the human animal or a wolf, the survival of that organism is dependent on the will to survive. When you undermine the will through convenience and providing alleged security, when you create dysfunction in the will by making horribly sickening choices legal, by making evil good, when you undermine a human will, you undermine human well being. It's just that simple. That's why I want to practice the politics of human well being. Anything that undermines the human will. Now, you can take a look at these chemicals, that Bobby Kennedy is pointing out, these chemicals that go in the food that are not good for us, allegedly. And there needs to be research, and any additive or chemical that goes in the food in the name of science that is really helpful could be contained. And then what helpful is what street corner you're on. But anything that is uh, physical, in the physical realm, that undermines human health, you have to ask yourself, why is that there?
Mm.
I mean, why have we tolerated a world that bathes us in vibrations and in just vibrations, chemicals that undermine the functioning of our cells? We have to ask ourselves those. That's a reasonable question. This country went through a tremendous period of revolting against the pollution that came in the unrestricted industrial development of the country. Like in the 1960s, we should play this. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. a river caught on fire. I mean, the river was burning. There was so much pollution in the river, it actually was burning.
Where was that?
I think it was in Ohio. I can't
I'm
re
gonna
it
find it.
was the '60s. But, we had all kinds of, pushback from the populace about pollution, which was actually part of the climate agenda, was the first phase, and President Nixon brought the Environmental Protection Agency into being during his Republican administration to try to bring about a more healthy environment within which we, the people, could live our lives. But when you get into the undermining of the the human will, which is not a physical issue, it's deeper. It's ideological and then some. Um, I mean, that's where the game is won and lost. So when I say we take more, did you find it?
Yeah, I did. I don't know how to pronounce the river. It is
Ki
in
is
Ohio.
it Cuyahoga?
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
a memory.
It
Unbelievable.
it apparently lit on fire multiple times, like over 10 times it lit on fire.
Yeah,
That's crazy. They
that's
put it out and then it
the
just lit right back
yeah,
up.
it was pretty actually, got that blue flame working,
Yeah.
you know? Anyhow, my point is, these things are cultural. They're political only in the sense that, it will only be fixed politically when we culturally recognize, who do I wanna be? Do I wanna be a giver or a taker? Or do I wanna be at least balanced? Too many takers, $37 trillion of debt and $1 trillion a year trade deficit indicate we consume more than we produce. I will guarantee you that in the forest, that does not last long because if there's a colony of any kind of animal and there's animals that, you know, can't keep up, they're consuming more than they're producing for the group, nature takes care of that in its own natural way. And what we've done with insurance and government and all the things that we've got going here, we have, in a beautiful way, softened that process. And as soon as it was softened for the elderly, for the infirm, as soon as we started to love our neighbors as we wanted to be loved ourselves, as soon as we implemented a Christian uh, frame of reference, street corner into our public life and overcame feudalism, thank you, God, for making me an American. Other people rolled in right there and said, whoa, look at this. I can drive a truck through this kindness. And they did. And they exploited the system. So a system that was righteously constructed to care for the least among us was then exploited to create dependency from two ends. The people that didn't want to work because they're vampires and they want to consume more than they produce, and then the politicians that were born to protect those people's rights to be vampires upon those that actually produce more than they consume. And we have to change that culturally. That is a cultural phenomenon. I am working harder than any time I've ever worked in my lifetime because I see work to be done. I'm not looking to retire. I'm not looking even about what the money is. I'm willing to do the work that it takes because I love my country. And that's another idea that's critical. Where is our love of country? Why is our self interest so much more than our love of America? I love the concept of this country. I love it, and I want to spread the idea of a country that has a political doctrine that acknowledges a creator as the boss, the main dude, the Hefe, not some elected poser political politician, professional politician that lies when they speak. No, I want the search for truth to be promoted. So culturally, let us give more than we take, and let us preserve, protect, and defend something so eloquent as the founding documents of this country. And when we go into the political process with numbers, with numbers, it's over. It changes. We refreshed it. It'll run down again, but hey, let's get a good 30 or 40 years out of this deal.
Mm.
It's the natural cycle of things. I don't get shook up because things are looking dark. It's dark before the dawn. Let us take this darkness and transform it into light, but it requires work. Now, everybody we're going to see that's commenting is going to have a perspective on this trade war based on what they want to accomplish. So when you see some pundit on CNN or CNBC or Fox Business or wherever you're getting your news, remember that if they're telling you what the outcome's going to be, they're trying to make the future. They're either shorting the market or they're going long. I mean, they got a financial dog in the hunt because if they were completely without guile, they would say, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. Uh, President Trump has been saying that the U.S. and Chinese rapprochement, the lessening of trade tensions, is right around the corner. Did you see anything like that? Maybe
No.
not.
No, the last clip I saw regarding it is that lawyer from China.
Okay, that was on the last episode.
Yeah.
Well, since we had the last episode, the market was up, as President Trump would say, bigly yesterday. It was up bigly,
Bigly.
bigly. Because there's been this ongoing, growing belief that tariffs would be moderated, and we're going to go back to business as usual. Globalism will prevail, and that's really driven by the boomers that are sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, look at all that money I lost on my pixels." You know how stupid that seems to me personally. I can't even comment on it. I mean, we're dealing in unreality. It's not real. We're living in fantasy land. We're in the matrix. If you want to take that cash out of there and turn it into something real, like guns, gold, or real estate, okay, now you got something real. But when you're looking at this thing right now, I can't tell you how this is going to turn out. We have a situation right now, unprecedented. Stock market's going down, bonds are going down. Stock market bonds going, the dollar's going down, losing value. In other words, people are voting with their money and they're saying, hey, the stock in America is on the decline. And gold is going up like crazy. You don't own gold, do you?
I own 1 gram of it.
You're up a third if you bought it at the
Nice.
right time.
Nice.
I mean, gold is going because gold is the traditional hedge against a failing currency. And as I've been saying, President Trump is just an excuse to blame him now. I got my friend Rob just blaming Trump for everything. You know what? $37 trillion of debt. And we talked about last episode, Janet Yellen dropped $8 trillion of refinance on us this year. And Tom Emmer and McCarthy brought us this unrestricted increase in the debt, which is coming due right now to redo that. I mean, this stuff. These guys had this war with the Ukraine. It was all baked into the cake in 2021. They took everybody in a room and they said, "Hey boys, here's the play. Go fetch. Make the theater bring us the support and the outcome. Manufacture the consent of the people." And they're still doing it. I'm watching every day. I was watching when I was driving in this morning, my favorite I don't even want to call it leftist. It's globalist. It's just globalist. Globalist platform, Morning Joe, with Morning Miko and Joe Scarborough. And they're still beating the drum that the Russians were the aggressor because President Trump is trying to bring that war to a close. And he's got the agreement with the Russians. So President Trump said. He said President Zelensky is holding out. And, talking head after talking head. How can President Trump talk this way? Putin is the aggressor. We can't reward Putin's aggression, by giving them the Crimea. I mean, come on. Let's just President Trump, if you're listening to me, or anybody around President Trump's listening to me, which I know some people are, let's just get out of Europe. Let's withdraw. Let those people, and President Trump's going to do that. I mean, if he can't get these people to sit on their hands and quit killing each other, he's going to withdraw the entire American military infrastructure, which we're going to put up on the screen shortly. He's just going to shut it down. The budget that they're getting ready to pass, this big, new, beautiful bill, if they can get this through the sausage grinder, the administration has proposed defunding NATO, defunding the United Nations, leaving globalist organizations, which I have determined it has nothing to do with President Trump. Rob, I'm not looking, I don't need President Trump to tell me. I feel myself that these organizations are not good for the maintenance of a sovereign republic. I don't want to be involved. I mean, I would have been involved if they were doing their job. NATO was supposed to defend the peace. The continent is at war. It's not my war. Do you want to go fight in Europe?
No, not at all.
Does anybody you know in your generation, because you guys are prime time to go, anybody want to go be all they can be over there that you know?
I honestly know one person, but that's just because he's a drill sergeant and everything. He's gotten into that, but, no. The general consensus is I'm not leaving America to go fight.
Right. Come on. I don't want my kids to go.
Well,
And
it's why would I just don't get it because it's all the way over there. Why if I'm scared of defending my land, why the hell would I be going across the ocean to fight over there? And especially, my history knowledge or my knowledge of history and learning about these past couple wars, they've been kind of a hoax the whole time. Not that the war didn't happen, but the reason for the war was a hoax. So why would I ever trust the government saying you need to go over to Europe and do this?
this is a really good point, which is when we manufacture consent, we the people allow this manufactured consent, and oftentimes it's based on false premises. So not only is the consent manufactured through participation in media, but the premises themselves are focus group tested to bring about preferred behavioral outcomes. This thing is run by behavioral psychologists, anthropologists, and sociologists who are on the payroll of the state. They've graduated from our elite institutions, and their job is to make the outcome the overseers want, which is more debt and more war. You know, come on. I'm just tired of these professional political people. I got one for you. Let's play number one.
The U.S. political system hates China. Why? Because China's big and successful. And so that the U.S. hates. It's a rival, it's a competitor. And so this is the one thing he left on. Now he's going to mess up everything with this too, because in a trade war between the U.S. and China, China wins.
Stop. Stop. I just made the case that if somebody's making a punditry statement about somebody wins and loses in here, they got chips on the board. Now, this is Jeffrey Sachs. This is this Columbia University professor. I've tried to reach out to him. He's not interested in communicating with me. And now I know why. We featured him because he's spoken out quite eloquently about the Ukraine war and has identified that the United States caused it.
Yeah.
And this guy has a very in-depth history working in government. And obviously at Columbia, he's working at the Eye of the Tiger. And I thought, man, is Jeffrey Sachs going nationalist? And then I came across this clip, as we're going to see. He's not going nationalist. He's an unrepentant globalist. He just wants to return to the global system that's about peace and prosperity. And he wants to do it through the institutions that are already here. But that's just a cover story because he's smart enough to know these institutions are rotten to the core. So he's just a paid or a willing spokesperson for this system, he's going to promote globalism. And what he's saying is there's an outcome. First lie. I do not hate China. I am in this game. I don't hate the Chinese people. I don't hate the Chinese people at all. I like the Chinese people. I don't like how they treat me sometimes. But then again, I don't like how Americans treat me sometimes. They're people. There's no hatred. He's stoking the very hatred that doesn't exist by labeling it. I'm part of the government. I'm actually there dealing with Chinese people, dealing with people in Thailand, dealing with people in Vietnam, dealing with people in Indonesia. I don't hate any of these people. It's just business. I don't like any of them. I don't dislike any of them. Some I guess I have more fun with than others, but I remember it's business and we're not doing it to hang out. We're doing it to make money.
Yeah.
That's the point of the deal. So it's not really a kumbaya deal, but there's no hatred either. Got to leave your feelings at the door and then stoking this hatred and then making the statement that in a trade war, China's going to win. That's all you need to know about these people. I'm going to tell you, I'm in the middle of it. I have no idea how it's going to come out. None. Anybody who would be really frank about this would say they don't know how it's going to come out. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you evidence very shortly. Let's continue.
China does not depend on the U.S. market very much. It's about 12% of China's exports. China will do just fine.
Stop.
Then why are they threatening so hard, Jeffrey?
Well, that's a great point right there. That is a
Yeah, if they're
fantastic
gonna
point.
be just fine, they would not be threatening war.
They would just walk on by, right?
Yeah.
The real uh, 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 true trade deficit with China is not just China. It's Chinese companies that have been deployed throughout the world, creating workshops in all these countries that in the reciprocal tariffs announced it's Chinese production just in another country. And it was set up in that other country to avoid trade barriers that in many circumstances had been imposed by Democrat administrations like the Obama administration. There are thousands of what's called anti-dumping orders. An anti-dumping order is a prohibitive, punitive tax placed on a set of companies that produce a certain product, like tires. Tires in China used to be a big deal. The Obama administration wiped that out. Obama. And what the Chinese did was is they just went around the world. They went to Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia, Pakistan, Indonesia, Serbia, Morocco. They just proliferated. They decentralized. And if you add up all that production and all the industries, not just tires, but everything, it's about a $1.1 trillion trade deficit rate across all these countries, plus the 500 billion coming out of China. That is we consume more than we produce. And let's just continue because what Sachs is telling us is he's either misinformed, I think he's misinformed and deeply manipulative. Let's continue.
It's just dumb policy. There's no more, sorry to say it, there's just no more explanation to this.
Okay, stop. Dumb is called an ad hominem attack. He's saying it nice. What he's saying is Trump is dumb. There's just nothing dumber than this. When a PhD who's trained in logic resorts to an ad hominem attack, what he's trading on is he develops some bona fides with the Trump movement or people like me by revealing U.S. involvement in the wars, the endless war, which he went out there and did. But now I see he's just a secret agent. Having established some credibility, he's now going to support the globalist system because more integral to the globalist system than wars of an isolated regional nature is world trade. Free trade is the Trojan horse of global governance. Let's continue.
That it makes no sense. Now, it raises, if I could, just one last point. How can this happen when it makes no sense? And that people should.
Stop. Logically, he's now going to work off of a false premise. He's positing that from his perspective, the tariff policies make no sense, resorting to an ad hominem attack. They're dumb, which is just trading in his PhD, because that's not an argument. That's just labeling something. And now he's about to go off and use this false premise. How could this happen? To say that President Trump is a dictator. He's Jewish. He's a professor. He's a globalist. And he's not doing anything other than perpetuating the system that fills his dog bowl. Let's finish this clip.
Should understand we are in one-person rule in the United States. Our political system is in a state of collapse. What President Trump did is an emergency decree. Everything he does is an emergency decree. Literally, you can go on to whitehouse.gov and then follow the menu to executive decrees. And there are dozens of them. And each one starts the same way. With the powers invested in me as President of the United States, I hereby declare A, nonsense, B, nonsense, C, nonsense. Because he's king. Those powers are not invested in the President of the United States.
Stop.
They're
Actually, they are, because Congress, over a multi-decade period, passed legislation which nobody read and nobody cared about because somebody was trying to get something else. And the quid pro quo was, we're going to give you and we're going to fill your dog bowl up, Senator Jinx, but we're going to leave this paragraph in here which transfers Congress's control of X, Y, and Z to the president. So he does have these powers because Congress gave them to him. Jeffrey Sachs is acting like President Trump is acting extra constitutionally to support his false premise that he's acting as a king. No, Congress made him a king in exchange for whatever they got. And this thing that it's nonsense, 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 that's an opinion. I personally think that a $37 trillion debt is an emergency. I really do. When you spend more money on interest than you do on your military, you're going broke in a hurry. And then Janet Yellen dropped another $400 billion a year of debt payments on us with her caper. So now we're going to be up around $1.5, $1.6 trillion a year in debt payment, debt service interest payment. And we're running up another $1 trillion every 100 days. So pretty quick, it's $2 trillion a year in just paying the interest. Come on, $2 trillion? I mean, we're in a death spiral, Professor Sachs. Apparently, you don't want the people to know that at Columbia University, there was 2 professors there, Cloward and Piven, that posited the way to overturn the American Constitution was to overwhelm the system with chaos so that it broke right out of Columbia, where this guy teaches, where this philosophy was born and is developed and is proliferated throughout academic institutions everywhere in this country, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. So let's just finish the clip, just to finish the clip.
invested in the Congress. You read Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution. It says that all duties originate with the Congress, and specifically in the lower house, all legislation has to start in the House of Representatives.
Okay, so this guy's trading on being a PhD. I think I've thoroughly redacted his work from my perspective. But, he made a comment that everything is an emergency. No, it's not. I want to read something to you right off of a website that you can go find yourself. It's called trade.gov. It is the official website of what's called the International Trade Administration, that is part of the Department of Commerce, and it's the plumbing of where this trade readjustment is being adjudicated. This was yesterday. The U.S. Department of Commerce announced its final affirmative determinations in the anti-dumping duty and countervailing duty investigations of crystalline photovoltaic cells produced in Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. And remember, in the reciprocal tariffs, Cambodia was 49, Malaysia was 24, Thailand was 36, and Vietnam was 46. See, there's some coordinated thinking about to come out here. Based on the facts submitted through transparent investigative proceedings, Commerce determined that imports of solar cells from Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam are being dumped into the United States market and are receiving countervailable subsidies at the average rates outlined in the chart below. Listen to this. Solar panels, and there's a history on this I'm going to tell you about. Cambodia, the effective rate, 651%. Sounds like a showstopper, doesn't it?
650 what?
651%.
Of just
The
solar panels?
value when you want to import solar panels from Cambodia,
Yeah.
whatever they charge you, the tax coming in is 651% of the value.
Oof.
So if it's $100 a solar panel, the tax is $651.
Huh.
It's called a showstopper. Malaysia. Malaysia, the Malaysians weren't too bad. It's only 34.41%. Maybe that's why President Xi was in Malaysia. In the last episode, The Economist was talking about he's not sure which country's going to win the lottery. So he went over to Malaysia. Malaysia got a pass, 34.41. That's called the hits just keep on coming. Thailand, 375%. Vietnam, 395%. Now, these duties actually, just to give you a little look into my world where I play, because I'm telling you, you play in international trade, it's a blood sport. Most of the time, people don't go home dead. Sometimes they do. This is retroactive. Under the Biden administration, the Biden Commerce Department, in other words, the leftists that Biden put in commerce, determined that solar panels that were being produced in these countries were actually just transshipped fraudulent enterprises. They weren't really making the solar panels and the frames in these countries. The Chinese companies, with the support of their government, in violation of the World Trade Organization treaty, which they signed and they've read thoroughly, instead of actually producing them in these countries, they shipped the panels, the solar panels and the frames down to these countries, hired some people for 30 cents an hour to screw the panels into the frames, slap a made in Cambodia label on the box, and they shipped them off to the United States. And the Biden administration said, that's a scam, and we're going to bust these people out. This is, uh, fraud. This is a fraud. And what did President Biden do? President Biden said, yes, it's a fraud, but these are solar panels after all. We have to save the planet. So he overrode his own Commerce Department, set the tariffs to zero, and let the party continue.
Wait, he acknowledged that it was an issue and then said, "Let me change it to 0%."
Yes, that's what he did. It's in the Federal Register. You can go find it. I'm not making it up, okay? And, the Trump people came in and they remembered this, that, wow. And who are all these people bringing these solar panels in? Let me tell you, the companies, uh, these are Chinese channels, okay? So what President Trump has done is he's taken these channels and these rates like 651%, it's retroactive to the beginning of the, you know, investigation. So the import from Cambodia, for example, was 2.3 billion of these solar panels. Not small, it's big, right? But now the people that imported that 2.3 billion, they owe $12 billion. So he wiped them all out. So this is not an emergency order. This is called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of I think 1930, functioning today, and it was used by the Biden administration and then overridden. Could someone say that President Biden, in the name of climate change, was protecting the planet? Or did somebody's dog bowl get filled? I don't know.
Mm.
But when you override the people that you brought to the dance, uh, hmm, that was strange, wasn't it? Anyhow, President Trump has rectified this. And what's so interesting about this, and this is why I say nobody knows how this is going to come out. This is why I played this Jeffrey Sachs piece, besides I wanted to reveal him. But the thing that he said was China's going to win because this is only a small percentage of their exports. Actually, this is the first countervailable tax that's applied to what's called transnational subsidies. Quote, the Commerce Department is holding China accountable for its transnational subsidies through other countries that harm American industry. Market distorting, unfair trade practices against America have no place to hide, said Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. He continued, the Commerce Department continues to enforce our trade laws fully so that we can rebuild U.S. manufacturing and restore American competitiveness. In other words, the allegation, which still has to be affirmed, it's part of our administrative process. This decision has to go to what's called the um, International Trade Commission for a final vote. It's a fait accompli. They're going to vote to impose these tariffs, or these are actually punitive anti-dumping and countervailing duties. But they're wiping out all these people because they traded illegally. And the sobering moment, even for people like me, for everybody, if you read this, what President Trump's administration has done, he's said, China, you're subsidizing these countries. You're escaping our trade laws by playing whack-a-mole and going to these different countries. And to the extent that you're subsidizing this transnationally, we're taxing it. So the entire worldwide Chinese business model is now revealed and in the crosshairs. And man, this is going to bring the Chinese to the table because while they might be able to survive losing $500 billion of business, they might. Unlikely. I think Sachs said it was 12.5% of their export. You know, when anybody loses 12% of their business, that's on the edge of going down. So, now we got the whole kit and caboodle up on up on the bar. So we don't know how this is going to come out. And I'm going to tell you, this is the most threatening thing I've ever personally seen. And I've been following trade closely for 20 years.
One thing about that clip with Jeffrey Sachs, I think is just rather immature, is at the very beginning, he states that the motive is we see that China's winning and we're just mad at that. I think that's so childish. Like, are we really going to believe that our top people are looking over at another country and they're like, oh, they're doing it so good. I'm going to screw them over. I mean, am I wrong? Is it that immature?
There is some of that. I mean, that exists.
But yeah,
I mean,
but
I can say it
it's
exists with me because I'm dealing with the Chinese and they're good at what they do. And, it's taken me years to learn how to deal with this because they came into the game with a different set of rules, but they acted like they were playing. Remember, you wanted to talk about the history of trade,
yeah,
which I'm going to talk about it right now.
cool.
It was downstream. I was in China. I was doing business with Chinese people in 1993. And when it started, um, that's not long after Reagan. Reagan lit the smoking lamp for globalism. For all the Lincoln Reagan dinner, the Reagan lovers. I'm not saying Reagan isn't to be loved if you love him. I'm saying he was an unrepentant globalist who unleashed the free trade system. He made diplomatic peace with the English, which you can go figure out. He restored relations with England and he restored relations with the Vatican. Both had been ruptured in the Republican period of this country. You need to think through what I'm saying now. We had a Republican period that lasted until 1946. We fought 2 wars with the British. We weren't that friendly with them. It was a user-usee relationship. President Reagan turned it into a love affair with Margaret Thatcher and normalized U.S. English relations, Great Britain relations. And then he made up with the Vatican, which was, you know, heavy for the Protestants and for the Masons. They weren't happy about that. So this trade thing took off after Reagan. Nixon opened China with Kissinger, I think was 72. Not a lot happened for a while. And then there was a growing integration because the Federal Reserve and the banking system decided that it was much more profitable with much less risk to offshore the jobs, the buildings, and the machines. Buildings, real estate goes up and down, goes bankrupt. It's a long-term investment, 30-year fixed note. Machines break. They become, you know, um, obsolete. They're very expensive up front, and workers go on strike. They said, man, that part of it, let's let the slave handlers deal with it. The Chinese had over 1 billion people. They were working for nothing. Let the Chinese Communist Party do it. That was the deal. We talked about it. It was the deal. One of the experts in creating this business model was Mitt Romney through Bain Capital. Buy distressed U.S. companies, fire everybody, keep their trademarks, their technology, sell off the buildings and export the productive machines to China, send U.S. engineers over there to teach the Chinese how to use those machines and to conform to U.S. regulatory framework. And now you have offshored the production, but you've kept the product, the marketing, the trademarks, the technology, the patents. You've kept the monetizable financialization part of the transaction, and you've, gotten rid of everything that's real, like the real estate, like the real machines, like the real people. That all became digital to us. That was just an entry on a customs form called the 7501, which was coming in the country at 2.5% until somebody looked up in the early 2000s and said, what? I started in 93. Literally, when I started selling tires manufactured in China, nobody had ever bought a tire manufactured in China. And people would say to me, are they any good? I'd say, you know what? I don't know. But if you buy them and you don't like them, I'll give you a 100% refund. You will? Yes. Okay, let's go. And what people found out is, because they were less than half the price of an American-made product, that for less than half, they were good enough. And it just grew. And the Chinese got better at building them and more efficient at building them. And our country was set up for free trade because free trade was the cornerstone of global governance put in place by your Saint Reagan. I know people don't like it when I rip on Reagan, but, credit is given where credit is due. And I'm not going to say that it was necessarily wrong at that time. Let's just understand where it started, who started it, and why. And why. And it was the very same process we have going on today. The United States had an antagonist named the Soviet Union. We had 2 spheres of economic influence. The Soviets had what was called the Iron Curtain. They didn't do business with us unless they had a famine and they needed some wheat. They did their thing, we did our thing, and Reagan said, hey, we're going to just outdo them in the economic sphere. And he made all these trade relations and bound all these countries up to defeat the Soviets, and it worked just great. And China was part of the strategy. Got the same thing going on today. It's just now more in the other camp. Now you have the Iron Triangle. You've got the Soviets, now the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians. And the same thing's going on. President Trump's going around and saying, hey, what side of the football are you playing on? And what he just said to Cambodia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, make a decision and live with your decision because we're going to close our market to your goods. Now, that would wipe out a lot of companies, including TireGet.com. Because again, only 25% of the car tires used in this country are made here. 75% are imported, and the people that have, that are buying and selling that 25%, oh, they got a franchise, okay? They're the last of the Mohicans. Nobody's messing with their dog bowl. So us newcomers, because that's what I am, a newcomer compared to those people, we can't get in on that. But, I've said this before, if I end up going bust and that's the cost of maintaining freedom, that's the way it goes. In the meantime, please go to TireGet. Springtime, we'll make sure you get what you need. We'll put the tires on 5 minutes from your house. Just a short pitch. But this trade thing, I went to China, Tanner. I went 4, 5, 6 times a year. I had great relations with the Chinese. They were all smiles and everything was good. They did everything I told them to do for years because I know what to do and they didn't. And they learned really quick and they got organized and they built the infrastructure and they trained their people and they built their own domestic knowledge base so that they could build all these products at a lower price. Now, lower price, man. We did the same thing to the British. We were manufacturing at a lower price than the British could do at one time, for example. The market follows the price. There's nothing new about that. Our system is consuming more than it produces, which means that people are living high on the hog. When we go to a balanced state, people are going to work for less money. The dollar will be devalued. It is devaluing. We can build things here. It's an issue of economic independence. So this goes beyond um, nationality, anti-China, pro-China, the price of what you pay down at Walmart. This is about economic self-sufficiency, self-governance. We're a self-governing people. And what happened over the course of time is the business grew so big. And at one time, my business was really big. Um, the unions started to fight back because all the jobs were getting exported. So all the industries that didn't have strong unions, like electronics, there's no electronics manufacturing in the United States anymore at all. Before anybody could organize, it went to Asia. Furniture making went to Asia. Apparel, making clothes, went to Asia. A lot of industries that were uh, strongly developed here in the United States, plastics, lots. I mean, we could just go on and on. Before the industries could get organized to respond, the change happened so quickly over, like, I think uh, China went into the WTO in the early 2000s. I mean, in 10 years, they robbed the place. I mean, everybody went for the price. All these companies were packed up by companies like Bain Capital, a Republican Bain Capital. Republican. If you're in the uni party and you're watching, you know what? That's why people don't like you. The people know what happened. They know that your political outlook supports a political economy that doesn't do anything for them but make them poor. They don't like you. That's why we got this conflict in the Republican Party because the top of the party, for their own personal gain, packed up this manufacturing and offshored it to all these countries. And at the intellectual level, like at Harvard, they called it leading edge industrialization. We're going to help these countries industrialize because they're poor. And the cost was we made ourselves poor
Mm.
because a bunch of eggheads like Jeffrey Sachs are running the deal. And of course, why does he call President Trump a king? Because he doesn't like being out of power. That's why. I think we were calling Biden a tyrant too, weren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, name calling. So these factories got packed up. The union started to fight back with these anti-dumping and countervailing duty orders. President Trump unmasked the Chinese in 2016, and people like me looked at it and said, wow, I'm out. This is not working. I don't want to be part because, see, President Trump is incentivizing people to get out. These poor people, and they're poor now, whatever their ill-gotten gains were, when you got to pay a 651 back tax on $2 billion, you're wiped out. He wiped these people out. So, for the people that are trading in anti-dumping and countervailing duty goods, hey, That's one of the reasons I got out. You know, it's carrots and sticks, right? I got out. The carrot was I love my country and I don't want to do things that are, undermining country. But if I stayed in, you can get smoked. That's the way things work in the grand old United States of America. So that it's not all like Sachs said, the invoking emergency powers. This is our system working. The Chinese are doing everything they can to maintain the illusion that they're winning. They're manipulating markets. They are selling off their treasury. They hold $1 trillion of US debt, treasuries. They're selling it off, flooding the world with dollars. Because when they sell off that treasury, they get paid in dollars. And then they sell those dollars and convert it to RMB, their own currency. It's maintaining the value of their own currency and flooding the world with dollars. So the dollar is declining. The treasuries are losing value because there's more. The Chinese are dumping the dollars and the treasuries. They're manipulating the system. That's why treasuries and dollars going down. And then they've put limits on how much you can sell off in the Chinese stock exchange. So if you're a big institutional investor, you can only sell off 6 million bucks a day, which keeps their stock prices high. And the Chinese have told their banks to buy yuan, which increases the value of their currency. And the companies there are buying back stock. And the government is buying stock, keeping the value of the stock market high. It is about face. But when you intervene into an economy at this level, that's that size, eventually you're going to run out of countermeasures. And when that happens, uh, we're going to start to see what's really going on. I mean, we're not doing great either.
Mm.
Let's see, what's our stock market doing this morning? Of course, it's, tonight when you watch this, it's going to be different. But the market's break even right now. It's flat. So the Chinese are manipulating their economy to maintain its viability. And this goes far beyond uh, the trade in economics. Tanner, there is a series of maps under number 2, who is the aggressor. Can you put up the first one with the Iran?
Yeah.
Okay, so here is the country of Iran, one of the countries in the Iron Triangle, and all those American flags are all the American military bases that are around Iran. So my question would be, who's really the aggressor? Who's really threatened here? I mean, it really depends on what street corner you're standing on. Because if you were standing in Iran and you got up in the morning, uh, every direction you look except for north, you're surrounded. Let's look at the next picture of Russia. Here's Russia. And look at all those American. You see how uh, well deployed our military is around the world? We are a globalist entity. There it is. So if you're Russian, get up in the morning and you look west, you see the American flag. There you are. And where's Ukraine? Right where the Russia and the American flags uh, have a border. And the one I really want to get to is take a look at China. Look at all those American military bases ringing China. So my question is, who is the aggressor? Now, when you're in this frame of the Fox News people and the $1 trillion military budget, and we are the greatest, the best, the most wonderfulest country in the history of forever, um, it's easy to believe that we need those bases there to contain these awful dictatorships. But from the perspective of those awful dictatorships, we're threatening them. A process of de escalation would include withdrawal, the defunding of NATO, the end of the United States pursuing neocolonialism or the defense of the English and Japanese colonial empires. I said this on the last podcast. I want to say it one more time. We, the people, are not an empire. We are a republic. We're a country that revolted to extricate ourselves from an empire. Yet somehow we ended back in the empire business. And how that happened, from my perspective, is the empires penetrated our elite academic institutions, bringing us professors like Jeffrey Sachs who promote globalism and neocolonialism, even when they say they do not. President Trump um, has made demands on Harvard University to change the way Harvard University goes to market, which is as leftist as you can get. And there's $9 billion of funding short term that's supposed to go to Harvard. And President Trump said, hey, please, could you have a diversity of curriculum, a diversity of professors, a diversity of thinking? And Harvard said, no, we're a private institution. We're going to defend liberalism. It's a liberal arts education. You know, when you send your kid, like if you were my kid and I sent you to the University of Minnesota, you'd probably either join one or, you could have a couple places to go. You could go into the sciences, but many of the people get a liberal arts education. You've heard that before.
Yeah, I think I technically have a liberal arts
The liberal,
education.
what are the liberal arts? Come on, the Democrat liberal order. And we send our kids, we pay them to become expert in the liberal arts. So President Trump is saying, okay, we're not trying to shut down the liberal arts, but how about some Republican arts to balance it out? And Harvard said, no. And so President Trump said, we're going to freeze $2 billion of grant money, which, of course, Harvard came right back and said, we're not going to be able to cure childhood cancer if you do that, which is, propaganda. Because if they were going to cure childhood cancer, they could have done it 30 years ago. Because, we got the finest research in the world, the greatest drugs in the world, the best medical devices in the world, the biggest research budgets in the world, but we're 48th in life expectancy. I see a problem with that, myself personally. I mean, we're making a lot of investment, but there's no outcome.
The leading cause of death in America is heart disease. Is it?
Number two is
Number 2, what is number 1?
heart disease.
Yeah,
Number two, cancer. You know what number three is?
isn't it accidental deaths?
It is deaths that happen that are called iatrogenic. I'm going to let everybody look up the word iatrogenic disease.
You're gonna have to spell
Iatrogenic.
that.
Iatrogenic. Take a look at that, and we're just going to move on. Now, White House freezes $2 billion of these funds. Remember, there was short term, $9 billion going to Harvard, which has a $50 billion endowment. So these people are pretty wealthy, but they're still depending on you and me to fund them for whatever the hell they're doing there, turning out leftists. Did you look up iatrogenic?
Yeah. So
Great.
it is accidental deaths, but it's
Of a very specific kind.
yeah,
Okay.
caused by a
Everybody look it up.
specific
Everybody
person.
look it up. Let's not make it any worse for us here. Okay. So 2 billion is frozen by the Trump administration to put pressure on Harvard to change the way it's going to market. Starting at number one. Harvard sues the Trump administration to get its money back. It's going to get its money back because the judges that are going to rule on this case were educated at Harvard Law School. So what do you think they're going to do? So these people that are accusing President Trump of being a dictator, they have a decentralized dictatorship of common interests. Or as Steve Bannon so aptly says, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. What a great line. And here in Minnesota, I just want to highlight something because it's going on in your state also. This internet thing is not to be trivial. It's not a trivial deal, okay? And it's an information war on the internet. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have an advantage, and I hope you do too. I have feelings, and I can feel when someone who's getting involved with me or someone who's posting up is a paid operative. I can feel. So you people are not hiding from me. I'm going to tell you right now, in my opinion, based on my feelings and my observations, this deployment of Michael Broadcorp by the Republican Party, which is on record, it's still going on. And now it is growing where these people are setting up many, many ghost accounts with, because you can make an account with any name, right?
Yeah.
And the sole purpose of these accounts is to confuse Americans interested in maintaining a sovereign republic, to confuse us. Like an account's name will be Mega, but the post will be Mega Global. And you read it and you go, what is that? And you go look at it and it's just it's a bot. It's not even a real thing. It's just been deployed to sow chaos and confusion in the minds of the American citizen. This is something you have to work on your feelings and work on your research, and you need to know instantly. Can you feel it when something's not right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of numbers. That was one of the things when Elon had bought Twitter, and he cleared everything out. He said that he deleted close to 50% of the accounts that were on Twitter because they were all bots. They weren't actually being ran by a person. They were posting political things that were super extreme on either side. So these things exist, and the Twitter thing isn't even the only example. I know that it was discovered on 4chan. That's a social media website that no longer exists, but they saw that like a bunch of the posts that were posted on political forums were bots. And it's like a serious thing overseas, like, in China, they have, some called bot farms, and I've seen videos where they have these, like, supercomputers that will be running, like, 20 different phones, so the screen just looks like 20 different phone screens, and it goes through and it makes posts, likes accounts, or makes different comments on posts. So bot farms are a thing, and it's a whole business.
And it's there to confuse me.
Yeah.
But now the Republican Party is got a bot farm going. Yes, that is my allegation unsupported by evidence. My only evidence is I see what's being posted in my state, so that means it's probably going on in your state because the infrastructure of the party is aligned with the globalists and they're being threatened. It's just like the thing you said was so great. If the Chinese, if they're so good in the hood, no matter what happens, why are they threatening war in response to this?
Yeah.
If the Republican Party was so powerful, why did they condemn Action for Liberty if the group is so irrelevant?
Have they ever condemned, like, ABC News or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so they go after Action for Liberty?
Obviously, there's, some juice here. Why are they condemning Royce White? Make it personal. Why do they condemn me? Because, I don't want to be a threat to anybody. I just want American citizens to organize, get involved in your local political parties, and have regular people that are not paid political operatives pursue policy, the politics of human well-being. Oh, they don't like hearing that. That'd mean I'm no longer inventory. No, their job is to knock me down and keep me down. And what happens now is because it's such a critical moment in human history, there's a lot of people showing up like Conor McGregor. You ain't going to knock Conor McGregor down. He's going to knock your ass out. So when people start coming to the fore that are trained and have courage, this is how we have a political change in the country. And it's so easy to change. All you have to do is do what you're asked to do. Inside, there's going to be a little voice in your head that says, do this. If it's just repost the link, thank you. If it's buy tires, thank you. I need the support. Go to the Free People store. I need the support to build this thing. If you would like to be involved here in Minnesota, I'm easy to find. We're going to start organizing this now. We're going to start organizing it. And you're going to say, well, there's other organizations. Yeah, there are. I'm interested in my organization, what I'm going to build. Because I have an agenda. I have an agenda. I have a goal I want to accomplish. I'm willing to uh, accomplish that goal or die trying. That's just how I am about it. There's no retreat. There is just advance. I was attacked. I want to go over this for the Republican Party operatives that are being told to watch me. Let me tell you, I came to the party to serve the party. You people attacked me. My hands were in my pocket. It took me actually a long time to figure out the game because I have a heart like a child. I am not guileful. I am not tricky. I just came in because I loved my country and I wanted to serve my country through political action. I thought I was fighting the Democrats, the leftists, the communists, the scumbags. That's who I thought I was fighting. I didn't know I was fighting them in my own party. Well, now I know. Okay. Politics. I'm not upset about it. It's not personal. To me, it's just business. I want to end with something and talk about it a little bit more because I am trying to hone uh, one of my missions now. One of my missions, I was on an airplane in 1984. Uh, Let me just say, he was a very accomplished and senior person who had a long and storied career. And we were on an airplane flight together, and he looked over at me and he said, Mr. Penn, you could be a leader of the Jews. And I looked at him and I thought, why would you say such a bizarre thing to me, sir? I think I said that, sir. Why would you say such a bizarre? I haven't been in a synagogue for 5 years. And he said, well, Mr. Penn, I don't know why I'm saying it, but I just know if you choose to, you can be. And I bookmarked that and thought about it as one of those crazy experiences that I've had in my life. I had a lot of crazy experiences with that guy for a very long period of time. But it didn't make any sense to me. Um, I don't do it every day, but I get up and I pray in Hebrew and I'm raised Jewish. And I love the Jewish people and I love the Jewish tradition as I know it, as I know it. But because I had an experience, which I've talked about, where uh, Christ actually appeared to me in my own thinking. And if you want to criticize that, go ahead. But for me, that was the penultimate experience in my life. Um, I didn't stop being Jewish, but I realized that for me, there was a Christ that was a real thing. So I studied the New Testament. And then I find myself, gosh, studying the New Testament, you say that to a Jewish person, hey, you're an apostate, you're a heretic. So I had a hard, I mean, I hid this for 30 years. My father was alive. My father was, went to rabbinical school. My grandparents were Orthodox. So, I mean, this is not something I could talk about because, people spit on you. And my father passed in 2019. And I started to talk about this a little bit. And I'm certainly not saying I'm a leader of the Jews. That's what he said. What I'm saying is I want to hone my skills in talking about the Jewish identity. I know it from my street corner. I love Judaism and I love the Judeo Christian uh, tradition. And I don't see them as being two traditions. I don't think of it as being Jewish. I don't think of it as being Christian. I think of it as a system, an energy system, a system of learning intended to bring about maximum well being for me, maximum longevity, and maximizing my ability to give rather than take. And I'm horrified by the use of the Jewish identity by Jews and non Jews alike. Could you please play number 5?
When the Lodz ghetto was sealed in May 1940, Henrik Ross was forced to move into the ghetto. He managed to get a job as one of the official photographers in the ghetto, which gave him access to film and processing facilities. He used these facilities to secretly take pictures of the suffering of the Jews in the ghetto. He hid his camera under his coat and he opened it slightly and took snaps of images he saw.
ואני הולך, אני ראיתי משהו מה צריך לצלם, אני אסתכל ככה, ככה, היא הסתכל, אוי, גרמני משהו, סגל לך דברים, ואני זה בסדר.
In this fashion, he managed to accumulate thousands of pictures that show us now what life was like in the ghetto. A few of his pictures display public executions and deportations. One of these pictures was taken in 1944 at the railway station in the Lodz ghetto. The photograph displays a cattle car and a group of people standing around it. If we look at the framing of the picture, we can see that it is not centered. And this is important because the photographer was very professional and he was skillful. Furthermore, there's actually a black part on the left-hand side on the picture and also building material in the foreground. And all of these images are actually blocking the view of the person looking at the picture. It shows us that he had to hide in order to take the picture. The frame is actually showing the conditions of his hiding place, that he did not manage to take a closer look at the actual scene.
Once, as a cleaner, I succeeded in entering this station. The men closed me into a storeroom of cement.
Do godziny jakiejś 7 wieczór, aż Niemcy odeszli i transport odjechał.
I stayed there from 6 in the morning till 7 in the evening, until the Germans left and the whole transport was sent off. I saw this transport leaving. I heard the cries. I saw the beatings. I saw the shootings. I saw them being murdered.
Henrik Ross risked his life in order to show what the Nazis tried to hide. And when we combine his testimony with a picture, we actually learn much more about the scene that we're seeing in the picture. We see people boarding the train, but we don't know what happens inside the cattle car. And we also don't know what happens to the people when they arrive at their destinations. So only if we contextualize the picture and put it into context with other archives like testimonies, maps, or historical accounts do we gain a better understanding of what was going on. When the liquidation of the ghetto began in 1944, Ross decided to bury his archive into the grounds of the ghetto so it could be dug up later and bear witness to the persecution of European Jews.
Just before the closure of the ghetto, I buried my negatives in the ground in order that there should be some record of our tragedy, namely the total elimination of the Jews from Lodz by the Nazi executioners. I was anticipating the total destruction of Polish Jewry. I wanted to leave an historical record of our martyrdom.
Henrik Ross survived the Holocaust, and he managed to locate and dug up his material after the war. In comparison to the perpetrator pictures, we can see that his collection is exceptional because he clearly loved human beings and social interactions and felt compelled to commemorate the Jewish life in the Lodz ghetto.
It makes me so sad because my family was in the Ukraine. The reason I'm playing this is for the Holocaust deniers. I mean, when you start a political position with an ad hominem or a false premise, everything you build on top of it is weak. This event, this murder of these people is a real event. I grew up with these people, the survivors. So many people that I knew in my own family died in this Holocaust. I didn't know them personally, but my mother and father knew them, and my grandparents knew them. It was all my aunts and uncles and great aunts and great uncles. My great grandfather, my great grandmother, they were all killed there, and their children knew how they died. The word got out. So I heard these stories growing up, and there were survivors. I remember right behind my house. I used to, when I was young, 8, 9, 10 years old, I used to mow the lawn for a couple that had survived Bergen-Belsen, and they had the tattoos, and they were gaunt, and the look on their faces, they were affectless. I mean, I interacted with them. They were the walking dead. This experience was so damaging. This was in the mid-60s, so it was 20 years later, more than 20 years later. And they lived out their lives in suffering, and that suffering became part of my life. And I know I have post-traumatic stress disorder for things that happened to me as an adult, but I know I was well down the road to sleepless nights because I grew up listening to these stories when I was young. Um, so I'm saying this that I want to go on record of saying this is a real event, and it traumatized the world, and it traumatized the Jewish people, my people in specific. But I mean, there was 88 million people died in 5 years. It traumatized everyone. And that trauma, the desire, what was called to never let this happen again, this um, was used, the identity of these people, the deaths of these people, the identity of Hitler, the identity of the Nazis, the identity of their victims. These identities were used to supercharge the process of globalization that had been going on in this country since Woodrow Wilson. The specific process of working towards global governance and one world economy, it was galvanized by this slaughter in World War II. And the use of these identities to justify an administrative state on a globalized level. No different than the freeing of the slaves, the end of slavery, was used to justify an administrative state in the federal level to make sure that the ending of slavery resulted in the civil rights of every citizen. And that became closely allied with this World War II. That narrative was kind of merged with the narrative of human rights that had been so grievously violated in in this Holocaust, in this World War II. So this idea of human rights, the Atlantic Charter, the self-determination of all peoples, all of this was not bad. It was just weaponized over time, progressively weaponized to support the outcome of world governance. And you take a look at the strongest supporters of this still to this day are Jews, blacks, and women. Three classes of people that were very discriminated against. Uh, women were property, blacks were property, and Jews were, suffered a genocide. So these identities are critical to the effort to say we need to have a certain kind of global governance because then again, these traumas became associated with nationalism, that German nationalism was identified as the cause or contributory to the genocide. And that's just not necessarily the whole story. History's written by the victors who wanted to have global governance for all kinds of reasons. But, there is a stridency that has developed across these communities. I was watching a clip of a black academic, and he was calling for the extermination of white people. Okay. That's kind of a never again mindset. And we've got a kind of radical politics going on between the sexes right now, which I have to live through, which we all have to live through, which is not about harmony. It's about a fight over these very same issues of identity. But commenting on the Jewish part of it, and thank you for letting me just ramble on, because I got to work this out so it becomes coherent. The kind of Jewishness I grew up with was all about submission to the Most High God. It was about prayer and fasting and gifts, and it was about study and prayer and fasting and charity. Those were the pillars of the Judaism that I grew up with. Let me just say it again, because this is how I grew up. These are the people I grew up with. Pray 3 times a day. Don't walk on the Sabbath. Don't turn a light on the Sabbath. Don't mix milk products with meat products. Only buy kosher foods and keep a kosher home. So you're different right there because of the laws of kashrut. And then you've got prayer 3 times a day. The Sabbath is really all day prayer. Get there 8 o'clock in the morning, come home 3 o'clock in the afternoon, go back at 5. I grew up like that. It wasn't we're going to get the praying done in time to get to Perkins for, brunch, and then we'll be home in time for the football game. It wasn't that kind of deal. It was a full-on prayer before you eat, after you eat, when you wake up, when you go to bed, 3 times a day, on the weekends, and then the holidays. Your life was prayer. And then study, because you had to study to do that kind of praying. And then you fasted. You actually fasted to create an outcome in the secret society that actually is Judaism. And then you gave charity. Charity. That's how I grew up. That's the people I grew up around. Play Rabbi Shmuley again, please.
I want you to know that I will die the way I was born, a believing Jew. That there is no power in the universe, including you, God, creator of heaven and earth, he who fills the infinite expanse of space. I, as a Jew, am stronger than you. My name is Israel, he who wrestles with God and is victorious. I will die with my faith intact. There is nothing you can do.
This never again thing has gotten out of control. I understand how it happened, but I'm going to tell you for myself, I could never say those kind of words. That's why I had that podcast, Blasphemy. I don't believe in using the Lord's name in vain. I don't believe in that. That's an extreme example of something I have to grapple with to understand. But we see it so much in the community. People who don't pray, yet they're aligned with a global outcome that really benefits them financially. It has nothing to do with you saying you're Jewish at that point, mind you. You're just using the Jewish identity, wrapping yourself in the cloth of Jewishness to accomplish an economic outcome and a global governance outcome to save your own ass and your own way of thinking about it. And this kind of display of hubris at a level that is intergalactic, I wrestle with God just by sinning. That's awful enough. But to say I wrestled with God and came out victorious is so far from the kind of faith that I was brought up with, it has nothing to do with it. And that's my final point for tonight's broadcast. When you lose touch with the humility that is associated with monotheism, you're practicing a different kind of religion. And there are a lot of Jews in this world, for those of you that have anti-Semitic feelings or beyond feelings, agendas. I want you to know there are Jews in this world that are completely subordinated to faith in God. All they want to do is pray and be left alone, give charity, study, and fast. They don't want any of this. They might be Jewish nationalists. They want to maintain the integrity of their own identity, but they speak English. If they're in America, they need to follow our constitutional governance, as my grandmother taught me, give it up, become an American? She told me directly. And that's why I sit here before you, and I'm not like my cousin who's on the West Bank carrying an Uzi and wearing a yarmulke. He's a rabbi. You know, I had that opportunity, but my grandmother said, and I listened to her. So we have a diversity of opinion in the Jewish community. I'm saying this because I'm going to keep talking about it. The anti-Semitism for the Jewish people, we need to contemplate why people are anti-Semitic. That might help us instead of just saying never again and we're going to wrestle with God and come out victorious. Because Rabbi Shmuley, I know there's a lot of people on the street that if they want to wrestle with you, they're going to bend you up like a pretzel. So before we start thinking about wrestling with God, we start thinking about wrestling with people that want to harm the community. And they're out there, they're in this community listening to me. So I'm trying to just say, there are people that are Americans like me that pray in Hebrew, that love this country, that are not a threat to the sovereignty of the United States of America. And about half the people in Israel reject Prime Minister Netanyahu and his endless war against the Palestinians. So let us acknowledge the diversity of opinion within the Jewish community, within the Catholic community, because we're going to see that come out. We just had a globalist pope run the church in a direction for a long time. Let's see what kind of pope comes out now. There's a diversity of people and opinions in that secret society. And there's a diversity of opinions and people in the political parties. And there's good people everywhere, and there's awful people everywhere. It's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. There are more good people than there are bad people, but the bad people all show up. And that's why we have the awful situation we find ourselves in today. The good people don't think they have to do the work to keep the space open for their goodness. And when the door slams closed on them, as it did on those Jews that were exterminated in Europe, when the door slams closed, it'll be too late. So right now, today, ask yourself, are you ready to do whatever it takes so that freedom is maintained and is growing in this great nation? Thanks very much. I want to wish you a great weekend. Thanks for letting me work out some of this tonight. We'll be back next week on Tuesday, God willing. Tanner, thanks very much. We've got a little music. If you ever come to one of these podcasts and there was a blank space, it's because sometimes I use clips and YouTube changes its mind about what I can use and can't use. But I'm going to tell you, we like to end with music because the subject matter is so serious, and I personally like listening to music to give me a little uplift. Thanks very much. Thank you, Tanner.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.
A recording for Blue Note Records.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Funky, funky. How about a big hand now?
Wait a minute.
Groovy, jazzy, funky, bounce, dance as we dip in the melodic sea. Rhythm keeps flowing and drips to MC. Sweet sugar pop, rocks and pop. You don't stop till the sweet beat drops. I shall improve as I stick and move. Vivid poems recited on top of the groove. Smooth mind, floating like a butterfly. Notes set afloat, sung like a lullaby. Brace yourself as the beat hits ya. Dip, trip, flip, fantasia.
What's that?
Bitty bitty bop,
Yeah.
bitty bitty bop.
Funky, funky.
Feel the beat drop, jazz and hip hop, dripping in your dome, it's your zone and bop. Funk infusion, a fly illusion, keeps you coasting on the rhythm you're cruising. Up, down, round and round, rhymes profound, but nevertheless you got to get down. Fantasy freak through the beat so unique, you move your feet and sweat from the heat. Back I'm the Mac and I know that. The way I kick the rhyme, someone call me a poet. Poem steady flowing, growing, showing sights and sound. Caught in the groove, invitation I'm found. Many tripped and tore upon the rhymes they soared to an infinite height, to the realm of the hardcore. Here we go, off I take ya. Dip trip, lip fantasia.
What's that?
Bitty bitty bop,
Yeah.
bitty bitty bop.
Funky, funky. What's that? Yeah. 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 Funky, funky.
Jump to the jam, boogie woogie jam slam. Bust the dialect, I'm the man in command. Come flow with the sounds of the mighty mic master. Rhyming on the mic, I'm bringing suckers to disaster. Buku ducks, but I still rock Nike with the razzle dazzle. A star I might be. Scribble, jabble, scrabble on the microphone. I babble as I fix the funky words into a puzzle. Yes, 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 on and on as I flex. Get with the flow, birds manifest. Feel the vibe from here to Asia. Dip trip.